Hello and welcome to the Fairhaven Church Parent Talks podcast, where we desire to equip and empower you as parents to lead well in your home. Today is going to be a great day because I'm kind of throwing a wrench in my plan. And Caleb, who is joining us, and Nicole is joining us as well. But Caleb, you get to start us out with asking a question.
Yeah, this is a high pressure situation.
It is.
Okay, are you ready?
I don't know.
If you could have one actress play you, I was going to say actor, but it would need to be an actress.
I
you know?
see. Yeah.
One actress play you in your like biographical, is that the right word? Biography film.
Okay.
Who would you pick?
Okay.
I had no prep coming up with this question. They had no prep answering this question. So
That is fair. I did just ask you to ask a question in this moment.
Yep.
I have an answer, but it applies more to my childhood. So growing up, I always was told that when I was little, I looked like Dakota Fanning, and she was very she was doing a big childhood actress moment, and I got it from adults all the time. They were like, "You looked like Dakota Fanning." So I feel like I would choose her because she would also be playing a young me. Or no, she wouldn't. Wait,
For part of it. Well, I mean, you'd have to go back in time.
To be young. That actually doesn't work like I thought it did. Well, I would choose a young Dakota Fanning to play a young me.
We need a side-by-side of the two of you
Well,
as
now
kids.
we look nothing alike. So I don't know what happened, but we did look a lot alike when we were younger.
That's so fun.
Fair enough.
So that's kind of my answer. I guess it didn't work like I thought it did.
So I'm going to say her last name wrong,
Okay.
but Candace Cameron.
Oh, yeah.
I always want to say Bure, but I don't think that's how you say it. But that's the only person
The girl
I can
from Full
think
House.
The girl from Full House.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
Randomly, my parents, I don't even know what event they went to, but they came back with an autographed signature of her.
What?
And I used to have it hanging in my closet.
That's so funny.
So I don't know why I have that.
It could be interesting. She's pretty emotional, and I'm not really emotional. So I feel like that could give a different glimpse into me.
Yeah.
You know, an emotional person.
I mean, she's an actor, so
Yeah.
she could play it.
Yeah. She
So
also
what
loves
actress-
Jesus.
Actress.
What actress would you choose, Caleb? That was your question.
My actor would probably be Tom Holland. I feel like that fits.
Nice.
Yeah.
I wish I knew who that was.
He
but I
plays the newer version of Spider-Man.
Caleb just wants to be
I
Spider-Man.
do want to be Spider-Man, yeah. But people have said he would be my lookalike.
Nice.
Okay, this is so funny and off topic, but I'm in school right now working on my apologetics degree. And my professor yesterday, randomly, I was listening to a lecture, and he said he had a dream that night that he was Spider-Man.
Wow. That honestly sounds like a really fun dream.
I feel like this is very odd that
It's
now
just
we're
a
talking
normal
about
dream
Spider-Man.
for me. You know?
That's so fun.
Every night you're like, now I'll be Spider-Man.
Yes.
Can't wait to go to bed to dream about being Spider-Man.
That's so great. Okay, so we're going to jump into our lesson for this week. And last week, we were talking about the 10 Commandments. So we're talking about the significance that those were not only for the Israelites, but that those are for us now, too. We also introduced a new Bible memory verse. And so that is 1 Samuel 2:2. And parents, I would just love to encourage you at home to be working on that verse with your family. That verse says, "No one is holy like the Lord. There is no one besides you. There is no rock like our God." So again, that's 1 Samuel 2:2. And that's just a great verse for you to memorize over the next few weeks. This is an interesting lesson because we've been walking through Exodus and seeing a lot of how God has really shown up and shown himself faithful. And so this lesson actually feels a little bit confusing to me, walking into it, knowing what the Israelites have experienced and now what it is that they are asking. And so before we jump into Exodus 32 through 34, Caleb, can you just rehearse with us the many different ways that we've seen God reveal himself?
Yeah, I've got 31 chapters to review.
Yes, you don't have to talk through every detail.
We're in deep. But yeah, so the Israelites were slaves to the Egyptians, and God uses Moses to free them. And even though Pharaoh was very against it, God sent the plagues, and the Israelites were freed. But then they're being chased by the Egyptians because they later change their mind. And they're like, well, it'd be better for us to just be slaves than to be chased by the Egyptians. And so God parts the Red Sea. And then again, they start complaining because they're low on food. And so this theme of them complaining a lot, and God provides food for them. And then last week we see God give the 10 Commandments. So that's like this super, super brief overview. But he is consistently providing them, whether that's freedom or splitting the sea or food or care, whatever it might be, he is consistently providing for them.
Yeah. So it brings us to Exodus 32 through 34, which is what we're going to be focusing on. And so, Nicole, what's happening with the Israelites in this section of the story?
A lot is happening. It's 3 chapters, and I highly recommend reading them for yourself, because as I was going through it, it's so dense. I was like, how do I summarize this without just reading all 3 chapters? But really, Moses has gone up and he's meeting with God and just receiving all of this information, really about what life looks like to follow God for the Israelites. And while he's up there, all of the Israelites come to Aaron, who's Moses' brother, and he's really been a part of this whole process. And they go up to Aaron and they're like, this is taking a really long time. We don't understand what Moses is doing, where he's at. And they say, can you make us new gods? Which is, a little bit shocking to read. But they say, like, can you make us new gods that we can follow? We don't know where Moses is. And so Aaron has them all bring their gold, and they make a new god to start worshiping. And then you see that up on the mountain, God has been writing out these tablets of stone with all the commandments. And then God says to Moses, basically, he's like, hey, this is what's happening when you go down the mountain. He knows. He's like, your people are now worshiping other gods. And you see God's anger, a very justified anger. I mean, we just talked about, Caleb said all the things that he's walked them through, and they so quickly turned to looking for something new to follow. And so when Moses went back down, he saw what was happening, and he actually threw the tablets down in frustration of what he saw. But it really starts a moment of seeing Moses interceding for the Israelites with God. He kind of is this like in between of being able to talk to God and really kind of, stand up for, or like just intercede for the Israelites. And so we see then that just so dense. There's so much going on. We see then that God, in his frustration, is like, I'm still going to bring you to the promised land, but I'm not going to go before you like I have been. And then as they're traveling to the promised land, or Moses is going to lead them to the promised land, we see that he keeps meeting with God and has these meetings within tents, and he's able to dwell and talk to God in that place. And I think my favorite part actually of these 3 chapters is when you read about Moses talking with God in the tents, because you are initially seeing God move in these really grand ways, and you're seeing him in his frustration and his anger as the Israelites have turned to worshiping other gods. But you read this like couple of words, and it says that Moses met with God and God talked to him like they were friends. And I think it just creates this new way of looking at God. Like, yes, he has this anger that is justified, and he's this all-powerful being, but he also is coming to Moses and talking to him like a friend. And I think that can help us feel like we can go and connect with God, just the picture that creates of who God is. But then we see that Moses continues to intercede for the Israelites as he's talking with him, and he goes back up and he recuts rocks to bring up with him, and he experiences God's glory. God says, like, you can't look at my face, but you can see my glory. And so he has that moment of seeing his glory, and he has the commandments written again on the rocks that he's able to bring down. But we find out that he's up there talking to him for 40 days and 40 nights. So again, it was a long period of time. And he has no bread, no water, like fully sustained by God. But he comes down with a glowing face, like he's physically changed from seeing God's glory. And so we see all of this as he comes back down. There's obviously more that's happening, but it's really a renewing of that covenant that Moses and God had initially initiated for the Israelites and his people. And so it's been renewed with God in that moment. And he says that he'll go before the Israelites as they travel to the promised land.
Yeah, I love that. And I love in the story how you've pointed out how we see so much of God's character like revealed through that story, right? We see like righteous anger, like God was right to be angry. I mean, he is a holy God, and So there's that righteous anger there, but there's also like his love as a father and as a friend that we see on display with Moses. And I love how you mentioned that Moses was changed. One, he was sustained by God, which is where we get our sustainment, right? And I love how the New Testament reminds us of that over and over again. But then how Moses was changed by God and how you could even visibly see that light in him, which is a great reminder for us if we are spending time with God, how God changes us. Something that I think about with the Israelites, Moses is gone and they're like, where in the world is he? And we have to remember that the Israelites had been impacted by the Egyptians in the way that they followed pluralism, right? Like they followed a belief that there were many gods. And we saw that earlier in Exodus. And we saw when God defeated the Egyptian gods and the Israelites showed the Egyptians this monotheism, so this following the one true God. Well, it's really hard to give up habits, I'm guessing, of hundreds of years. And so they're like, Moses is gone, we're just going to fall back into what it is that we are used to, which is this practice of many gods. As wrong as it is, that's what we see happening here. And so I just can imagine, in their humanity, that it must have been difficult to just completely step away from like what they were used to culturally. But at the same time, it's like 40 days, like long time, but not a long time in the grand scheme of things, especially when you're looking at all the ways that God has very clearly and obviously provided for them as they've been journeying. But I think it's a great reminder for us not to get stuck in old habits and to make sure that we're pursuing the things that we know to be right and true. So a couple questions. One, why are we so prone to worship things other than God, just like how the Israelites were? And two, how does Moses, his intercession for the people, point to Jesus? So this is a question for both or either of you.
Okay. Well, do you want to go first? You want me to go first?
I'll
go first. Okay. All right. So I think we are prone to worship things other than God. It can happen so easily, like without us even noticing it. But God can sometimes feel far away. Like we pray and we might not feel like we're hearing anything from him. And so, like, for example, when I was in college, I remember I play a lot of video games, and I remember having my Bible on my nightstand and my PlayStation controller on top of it. I was like, something's not right here. And I'd been spending so much time playing video games. It just was a habit. Like you're talking about these habits. And so everything in this world is tangible. We can feel it. It brings us a moment of joy maybe or happiness. And so it can be so easy to fall into worshiping our job, our work, our family, or just other things because we can feel it in the moment, whereas God, it might not feel like he's there.
Yeah. Well, the Israelites, when they chose to want to worship something else, they built a physical thing so that it could be there in front of them. Their eyes could look at it.
Yeah.
But I also think like we're literally created to worship God, and we're created to live in community with God and have unity with him. And so when we don't have that, like that part of us is yearning for something to worship and yearning for something to like feel in community with. So I think when our eyes aren't focused on God, we start to just naturally look for something else.
Yeah. Absolutely. So you mentioned, Nicole, earlier about Moses interceding. So how does that point to Jesus and what he does for us?
Yeah, I mean, Jesus came and there's a gap between us and God, and Jesus created like the bridge between that, because of sin. So he goes before us and he interceded for us and created a way for us to have a connection and unity with God. And we see that Moses went before the Israelites and he stood before God and created a way to intercede and have connection between the Israelites and God.
Yeah. I love that. It's such a great reminder. And again, how the Old Testament is always pointing back or pointing to the New Testament. And we have this opportunity to see the fulfillment, right, of the promise given, which is incredible. So we're going to change course a little bit here. This is a really great week for us because currently, today, we are in the middle of mixed camp.
Yeah.
And so, Caleb, I just asked you to kind of give us a little bit of highlight or some things that we can be praying for, the parents can be praying for over the next couple of days?
It actually ties right into what Nicole was saying. This like in between, this barrier that was created is what middle schoolers are going to be learning about. The name of the week is called the in-between. And so the separation between us and God. And so as you're thinking about, as you're listening to this or thinking about middle schoolers, be praying for them to experience God, but also to like fully understand what the in-between is and understand the importance of the barrier, that there was a divide and Jesus built that bridge for us. So pray for students to be experiencing God, encountering him, and understanding the importance of having a relationship with Jesus. Otherwise, we're having a great week.
Yeah.
Mix is the best.
Absolutely.
It's awesome. I love how God always brings these things together, right? Like how he weaves together what we're learning in multiple different places. And what a really cool thing. And as parents, you get to have a deeper discussion with your students because we're processing through this right now together. And there's more resources that you can find on our website as well. But make sure you're praying for your students. And again, if I could just encourage you as families to memorize scripture together, starting this week, or maybe you started last week, but to really lean into that, into 1 Samuel chapter 2, verse 2. We want to make sure our kids are hiding God's word in their hearts. So lean into that with them. Well, it's great to have you guys on the podcast today.
Thanks for having us.
And you are so welcome. I love having you guys join. So we will see all of you next week as we continue in the book of Exodus.